There we go. Hello, folks. Welcome to the January Lunch and Learn for the WiscWeb service. As I sent out in the email earlier, we have a very light schedule this month. We're in between, I guess, vacations at the end of the year slash start of this year. We are in the midst of change freezes. We were in a change freeze, then we're going to start into another change freeze on the 21st. So we're not doing too much um, on the delivery side of things. Like we're not pushing too many things to production right now. We're doing a lot of work on the back end to prep for our next updates. We do have just a few updates to drop for you guys. We'll be doing a theme update tentatively scheduled for February 12th. We have a couple of new features that are going to go into that. So change freezes usually during certain times of the academic year, start of the semester, finals ish time, and I think there is one more in there as well. I can't remember, but essentially, from a do it standpoint, we don't push any significant changes to our services because of the fact that we don't want anything to go down that is potentially necessary to faculty, staff, or students during those relatively important times. So that's what the change freeze is. Apologies if that didn't make sense earlier. Anyways, so the theme update, we have a couple of feature things going into place there. Some layout options and some image carousel changes are going to be going into play there. We'll be talking about those at next month's Lunch and Learn because they're going to go live, hopefully, with that February 12th theme update there. Lots of other conversations in the background regarding just the delivery of the UW theme and WordPress in and of itself, just from a standpoint of making sure we're up to date and security changes and things of that nature. The other update that I had on my list of things here is we're getting into the start of the semester. I know that turnover happens fairly often, usually around the semester times. I really want to encourage all of you to take a look at the users that exist within your sites. Make sure that people who should have access are still listed in there, and people who shouldn't have access, remove them if they've left the service. If you're not sure who they are, feel free to reach out to me because I can take a look. Sometimes you'll see some names in there from people who were involved with either the creation of your site, or it might be one of us on the team and you just don't recognize the name or the net ID that's associated with it. We also have a few people who were significant in the start of the WiscWeb service who might still be added to a few sites. Jamie Gakowski and April Ebosher being two of the people who I can think of who I see in several sites from time to time. But I really want to encourage people to take a look at their users list and remove anybody from your list who shouldn't be on there. I say that in light of the fact that come roughly around May, and I'll talk about it more, or I guess I'll talk about it again, not more, because I'm going to tell you now. Roughly around May, I'm going to start looking at purging the service users as a whole a little bit because we've been tracking. We put into place some abilities to track login dates, like last logins for users. Well, we put that in approximately last April, May-ish. And I've been eagerly awaiting a year to go by before I could begin a purge of our users list, because essentially I want to do two things with that. One is I really do want to reduce the number of users that we have within the service because, I mean, there are many. People have come, people have gone, and they can be removed from the service. They're no longer going to be logging in. But two, it'll give me an opportunity to take a look at the Google group that I use for sending out emails and giving that a significant purge as well, because there's a lot of people who are who are in that list, who either A, don't need to be anymore, and simply aren't receiving emails, and I just want to remove them from my list, or B, the email addresses are incorrect in the system, and so it'd be a nice way for me to just kind of like uh, get rid of that stuff. So yeah, so that's it. Jenna, any other updates that you kind of wanted to throw in? Is it a good idea to purge subscribers? So subscribers is a particular role that used to exist within sites that had intranets and had functionalities that were based on being able to access the content while not being able to edit slash make any changes to the content. We don't do that anymore. We don't do that intranet functionality anymore. I guess Jenna, you could say whether or not any sites are doing anything, but I would say if they're a subscriber, they don't need to be in your user list.
Yeah, it's probably okay, but we will also be kind of purging a lot of that. Like if there's folks that have not logged in, we'll be purging that. So it might get captured in the work that we do in May. It's helpful to know when there's like a an admin or editor that's no longer working on your site for sure. And Carolyn, we can always meet like in office hours too if you want us to take a little look-see at your site. To help you determine if those folks are okay to remove. We're happy to work with you on that. Um, I do have one other thing that I can kind of mention. It's that a project that I'm working on is a way to make our roadmap information a little bit more user-friendly and accessible to all of you. Um, we do have a roadmap for our team, but it's not something that we is in it like a great shareable format for you. And so we're working on that right now, and we hope to demo that at the February lunch and learn session. So just noting that that will be coming soon.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good way for us to try and be more transparent with what we've been doing, what we're working on, and what the future holds for some of our planning as well. Um, Again, we hit a month like this where it's like, there's not really much that we're doing from a public standpoint, but there's a lot of things that are happening in the background that we just either A, can't talk about because we're trying to get them to work, or B, they're complicated and Matt doesn't understand them well enough to discuss them publicly. Most of the time, that has to do with work that like Scott, Andrea, and Andy are doing in the background with like server stability and tracking, or not tracking, but like analysis of you know threats and things of that nature that happen that we track via Amazon Web Service, AWS, for that purpose. So
Yeah, and
okay,
I think, oh, sorry. I was
no, go
just going to
ahead.
say, is something that I'm trying to figure out ways of kind of showing you. We've gotten such great feedback from the surveying that we've done, from activities we've done in these lunch and learns. You all have been really awesome about giving us great feedback and insight into how you use the service. And so this is also an attempt to make sure that you can see that we are listening and applying that feedback. So hoping that is a nice way for you to kind of connect those dots.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So, as we said for this month, the schedule is light. What I wanted to do, one of the pieces of feedback, and kind of going along what Jenna was just saying, one of the pieces of feedback that we had received a while back was understanding the difference between what your website should be used for versus what another service that we have on campus, the knowledge base, can be used for. And I work on both teams. I work I'm half in the world of WiscWeb, half in the world of knowledge base, doing training, content strategy, consultations, and things of that nature. And so I thought, well, I'll just kind of give a general overview of one versus the other. And then for those of you who are not, I assume the vast majority of you are very familiar with WiscWeb and what you can do within a website. But I thought I'd just kind of introduce some of the things that you can do within the knowledge base as well. that may help you make a decision as to whether or not some content could live within your WISC website or should it live over on the knowledge base side of things. So let me, in preparation, really quick, share my screen. There she blows, and then bring up the chat so that people can ask questions as I, or not ask questions as they go through this. Okay. So on campus, we have several services that provide you the ability to deliver digital resources. A website can be done via WiscWeb. You also have access to do it web hosting if you wanted to have a little bit more control and freedom over what you deliver. Along with the fact that you get a little bit more control and freedom, you also have to support it yourself. Make sure everything's up to date. This is one of the conversations that Jenna and I have had with users quite a bit in the past, which is, yeah, you can do whatever you want, except you have to make sure that everything is secure, up to date, and patched. And a lot of times sites fall out of date with that type of stuff. And we have a lot of folks who work with us to move their content into WiscWeb so that people don't have to worry about that anymore. The knowledge base is another service that we have that allows you to create a repository for content. One of the things that we often try to encourage people to think about is the types of content that you want to make available to your audiences, either via website or knowledge base. So one of the conversations, and let me grab the URL and I'll drop this into the chat for those of you. You guys can take a look at this later if you so desire. During last year's knowledge base user group meeting, which is something we do on an annual basis where we kind of bring a lot of users together, talk about a number of things, have some people do some presentations. One of the presentations that we had was Ellen Clark from the Office of the Registrar at the time. She's not with the Office of the Registrar anymore. She did a presentation on what the registrar's site did to separate content that was in their website that really needed to be pulled out and put into their knowledge base solely. They had both for a time. I shouldn't say for a time. They had both. And for a time, they had content that was being updated in both website and knowledge base. The problem was different people were being responsible for those updates. And there were times when changes would happen and one was updated, one wasn't. Things got out of date. Also, there's a lot of redundancy there, updating in multiple places. The struggle with keeping content up to date, the struggle with multiple editors for that standpoint. So one of the conversations that we had was the fact that, well, what should go into a website? And so I thought about that, and I did some searching around, and basically when you Google search for what kind of content should a website have, it's usually going to tell you, how do you best market your website? How do you get advertising? How do you brand it and things of that nature? We live in an existence of our sites are or should be branded. It's a UW-Madison service. It's a UW-Madison site, even though it's a subdepartment, department, program, et cetera. We sort of serve the general mission of University of Wisconsin-Madison. So the website should be general information about who you are, what you do, what you offer, how people can find out more, and essentially representation of what you're doing for your program, project, department, et cetera. The knowledge base, on the other hand, is where you should send people for documents, documentation, and content that is more along the lines of like help, guidance, tutorials, policies, procedural type documentation. So, we have the WiscWeb site. The WiscWeb site is where we have a lot of our general information regarding who we are, what we do, what we offer to you as a service, how you can learn more, how you can get started, etc. Jenna just talked about the fact that we're also going to put some information out there about what we've done, what we're doing, and what we're going to be doing to provide, again, more general information to the our user base as a whole and potential user base as well. What we don't put into our site is our documentation, our how-to type stuff. And that stuff lives instead at our knowledge base. And the reason why a knowledge base makes this easier is the way that the knowledge base is set up is it is more built for immediate answers. You land on the knowledge base, you type in users, you find your list of what you're looking for. I want to add a user. I need to add I need to add a section in here of how to remove users. But it's that immediacy of need that the knowledge base helps provide you information for. It also allows for you to a greater extent, although you can create categories and things like that with posts and the various other options that exist within a website within the UW theme, the knowledge base allows you to categorize via topics the type of content that you want to deliver for your audience as well. And so as you can see within WiscWeb, we have a number of different topics that if you click on one, let's go with, well, we're talking about policies. Let's go with policies. Now we're looking underneath policies. And so this limits that search a little bit more. We only have 16, so it's not the best example. But if I go to, let's say, getting started there, 68. Now what I can do is I can further refine my searches to just look into the knowledge base, the getting started section itself. So you have this ability to further refine what a person might be looking for based on the type of content that you're trying to deliver to them. In the greater scheme of things, the other benefit of using a knowledge-based document versus trying to put this into your web page is it really is just a simpler format. The knowledge-based format is basically here's what it is and here's how you do it, or here's what it is and here's why it's important. A lot of times people will overthink what they're trying to do with their website. Graphs, images, embeds, things of that nature that will sometimes overwhelm your audience even more. When the simplistic way, and I've said this before in many a session that I've had, either lunch and learns, trainings, etc. I'm a very simplistic designer. I just want to give you what you need and let you get on with your life. I don't need the flash. I don't want the flash. That's not what I'm there for. I'm there for what is it? What does it do? What does it need to be? The knowledge base at its core is very much that. It's here's the information, here's how you do it, here's what you need to know, move on. And the access to it is quicker, I think, than web pages, because there are times when a person will have to drill down further and further within a web page to find the content that they're looking for, versus the knowledge base. It's a lot quicker to get to that type of content there. Trying to think of a few other things before I dig into some of the internal side of the knowledge base as well, to just kind of give you a look-see there. Websites, again, general introduction to who you are, what you offer, and how to learn more. Websites, a lot of times, are very broad. They are meant to meet the needs of many different types of users. You have, on campus, you have student needs, you have faculty needs, you have general staff needs, you have parent needs, you have public needs, you have donor grant needs, you have research needs. There are a lot. I just named off 7 different types of stakeholders that could potentially be coming to your website for that information. So the more stuff you try to shove into there that isn't relevant to some of those audiences, the more you might lose some of those audiences. So you really want to keep that content high level as you're bringing them in. The knowledge base is really meant for a particular set of audience, a particular sets of audiences that are coming for a need. They need to know how to do something. They need to know how to get to something. They need to know how to create things, design things, generate things, fill out things. That's where the knowledge base comes into play. It is that straight guidance that would provide them with that information versus a website as a general umbrella of that type of stuff. Websites are meant to be informative, but convenient. Again, as I said, the more stuff you try to add, the more you're creating layers of content that a person has to dig through to potentially find the thing that they're looking for. I've had a couple of conversations with groups that I want to follow up on in the past several months where there's like demonstrations, lab information, things of that nature, where I think it would be better served, instead of creating tens, dozens, many pages to deliver that type of content, a knowledge base would be better for that type of thing. More straightforward, more streamlined, easier to search, easier to find the things that a person might be looking for. And then, yeah, I said already earlier, the representation of the brand and the image is important. We do that quite a bit on the knowledge base side of things with the updates that we've done for the UW theme. But with the website, the UW theme is the brand. That's what we look for there. Okay. So internally, what can you do with the knowledge base that might benefit you? So first and foremost, you can have a number of editors that can access it, and you'll see some of your lovely names in here. And I'll touch on why you see some of your lovely names in here, because I think it would be relevant. So you have this ability to allow many users to edit content as necessary, similar to the website. But with the website, usually it's going to be, there's a concern there about, with WordPress, you don't have the ability to limit a person's access to like only certain documents or only certain sections. With the knowledge base, that's expanded a bit. You have that ability to limit what a person can edit, what a person can update to that extent as well. I talked about topics already. You have this ability to create those topics and subtopics. It just makes for better search engine optimization within a knowledge base group space there. There is an ability to create news articles. When I do the training for the knowledge base, I often, and I will say this when I'm training people from WiscWeb, I'm not a fan of creating a space that generates expectation and then nothing is delivered in that space. News sections, posts, blogs, even events. We just went through that whole process with the events calendar to the UW events plugin. And Jenna and I had this conversation often with groups where people were adamant that they wanted to use events calendar and they wanted to keep, they wanted to maintain that functionality, but they hadn't created an event since like a year and a half or something of that nature. This idea of creating a space that you might use but don't also creates an expectation and an assumption that nothing is happening to your audience. This is a bit of a diversion here, but I'm just kind of general user experience type stuff here. Same is true with the knowledge base. So we have groups on campus that don't really have a website presence. I use the Do It Help Desk as my example for this all the time. Do It Help Desk, exceptionally important here on campus. They do a number of things from support to guidance to troubleshooting to everything of that nature for a number of groups. Help Desk helps us out because they are our level 1 access to support. Help Desk doesn't have their own website, but they do have their own knowledge base. And they use their knowledge base when the time is necessary to post news articles. And this is their way to get that up-to-date information out there. If you have a website, my guess would be that that's where you're going to be posting news updates because that's where people are going to be going. So when users want to use news in their knowledge base, I always really push back and recommend that they don't, because it takes up space that's going to be empty. And again, to me, that just tells the user that nothing's going on, even though lots of things are going on. It's just kind of waste of space there from that standpoint. Really briefly, I'll touch on what the settings section does for the knowledge base area. The knowledge base is relatively open to what customizations you might want to do to it to change the look, the feel, and the interaction of your particular knowledge base. So most of you are familiar with, I won't make that assumption. For those of you who are not, here is WiscWeb's knowledge base. Hopefully a number of you are familiar with it. But we have a particular look and feel for our knowledge base. I mean, it's a combination of what Jenna's done to it, what I have tinkered with in it. And each knowledge base has the ability to look different if you would like it to. So here's help desk. If I just went to kb.wisc proper, here's the main knowledge base space, which again, you can do some things like this. You look under partners. Trying to think of one that does something unique and special. Here's a different look and feel. So coming back around to it, you have some customization options within the knowledge base if you really wanted to change the look and the feel and the layout. There are ways to make it look more website-y, which is what we've done with WiscWeb. We kind of wanted it to be a little familiar with like the menu across the top here and like a general introduction for that purpose. Or you can really change it up and do some different things. We have groups that have customized theirs to great extent. So you have a lot of freedom from that standpoint. So let me get back around. Oh, stats. There's also data tracking within the knowledge base. So you can kind of see what documents are being accessed most often. I always talk about data being an important aspect of decision-making when it comes to the web. I think the same is true from the knowledge base. Are documents actually getting looked at? Why or why not? That type of thing. So let me bring it back around to the users and kind of close up the conversation with what you can do via users. So in WiscWeb, we have a core group of users, which is I'm going to get the number wrong because I can't remember. Let's see, 8-ish of us who are on the team or close to the team, who are the primary editors, admins, et cetera, of the knowledge base. We also have a number of users that we have given access to our internal knowledge base and limited what they can do based on these checkboxes, these checkbox options here. So, for example, I saw Paige's name come up, so I'll use Paige as an example. We have a number of users like Paige who we have reached out to help us beta test features that will go live eventually. So, for example, the padding changes or the image carousel changes, we may ask some users to test those out for us, and we will create documentation for those and limit the visibility of that documentation to what are called user access groups, our test users. And so now what I can do is I can publish a document and only a limited list of people could view that document based on them being a member of my user list here. So now you're looking at one way that you could limit access to a document based on just adding their net ID and giving them just general access to this. So you can expand that now by using authorizations. We don't do this with WiscWeb because most of the stuff that we do with WiscWeb is for general public consumption. But I have worked with a number of groups on campus where you really only need groups from particular areas to be able to access the documentation that you're putting out there. So the example that I use here is I was once working with Office of Legal Affairs when there was some campus planning going on. And we needed to make sure that some of those documents were available to particular offices on campus, as well as some offices that existed over at UW Milwaukee. And so what I did was I created some group authorizations based on UDDS at the time, where anybody who fell under that particular UDDS could then access that specific document. And they could only access that specific document. So now you think of it there where you're like, okay, well, I want everybody in the chemistry department to be able to access our chemistry policies. You create a group authorization. When you're editing a document, there's the options down at the bottom to limit read and write access. I would say, read access. This is what we do. Only that particular group can access that particular content. So now you've locked it down one more level. These authorization groups can be used for leave. Thank you, users, authorizations. So the authorization groups can be used for UDDS right now, although that will go away once Workday's here and UDDS no longer is a thing. You can use it for manifest groups. So manifest groups is where we are, from the KB side of things, we are pushing people towards to use that instead of UDDS for purposes of limiting access to that content. You can also just add individual people. If you don't want to add them as a user, you can also use the group authorization to add an individual person. So you might use a UDDS for an entire department and then add 5 other people individually via what's called EPPN. I don't even remember what the terms are, but it's basically your net ID authentication is your EPPN value. So you can limit it that way as well. So a lot of times, coming back around to the WiscWeb side of things, we get the question about intranets, how to hide content, how to make content available, how to limit who can edit and who cannot edit certain things. We have the net ID authentication now in WiscWeb. We don't have the ability to limit what people can edit in WiscWeb. On the knowledge base side of things, you do have that ability. So it's one option to look at when you need to think about whether or not content actually does need to have that level of access. Can it exist in the knowledge base there?
Hey, Matt,
Yo.
can I mention one thing about that specifically?
Yes.
So you might be wondering, why? Why is the KB more customizable in that way? And I think something important to note is that WiscWeb is built on pre-existing technology. It's built on WordPress. And we can break that technology, but there's certain risks to it. We can kind of override things, but we try to do so sparingly. And by default, WordPress does not have some of those features. We try to do so sparingly because the risk is if WordPress then makes additional customizations or changes to that tooling, it could break anything custom that we have made, which makes more work for our team and can make things harder to maintain long term. Uh, by comparison, the knowledge base is a fully custom built tool. It's not, as far as I'm aware, it's not something that is built upon something like WordPress. It's something that was built for this need for the university. And as such, they have a little bit more flexibility there to customize based on need.
Yeah. The the developer of the knowledge base still is on the knowledge base team. So there is that benefit as well. But if something breaks, we sort of have the encyclopedia in house to figure out why something broke. Whereas with WordPress, if something breaks, you know, you don't get to see us, but we basically jump into a chat really quick and freak out trying to figure out why did something break and what did Matt do to cause it, kind of thing. Oh, the last thing I was going to touch on was the integration that we do have with WiscWeb, with the UW theme and the knowledge base, which is the KB plugin that we have, which allows you to add your knowledge base group space to your WiscWeb site. And then if you typed in a search result, you would get in one space your normal search results, but then in another space, a knowledge base search result as well. So there's that ability to integrate at the same time. So, all right. That's a lot of just chattering about the knowledge base and general overview of it. Does anybody have any questions on any of that stuff that I just kind of went on about? Feel free to unmute or type it in the chat, etc. All right. Hearing none, seeing none. I'm going to drop the new space question, the new space request questionnaire for the knowledge base into the chat there. Talia. Yeah. When would it be a good idea to include news in a website? Timing is everything when it comes to news on websites. A lot of times what I kind of base off is if you're really only posting news like once every, I don't know, I'll say 6 months, because there are times when really nothing is happening from a public standpoint. I think about us in general. If you don't have any news articles that are updating on that regular of a basis, I would instead of using like a news section, I might just carve out a little spot on my homepage that says similar to what similar to what we talked about with your application, the new job thing. I would do something like this. If there wasn't a lot of news happening on a consistent basis, but it was something that happened and you wanted to bring attention to it, I would do something like this. I would either create a section on my homepage that called out that information, or I would use the hero image to highlight it from that standpoint. A news section is great if there is consistent and persistent events or functions happening that require those types of updates. If not, you would just end up with a section that was empty. Or, so like for yours, you've had 3 news articles in the last, I don't remember when the last one was, but this is good. But if all of a sudden we get to May and this is still the last news article that you've had posted, as a user, I would be like, okay, well, guess nothing's going on, kind of thing, which may or may not be true. But it's perception. Hello, dismissal. Hello. Yes. Let's see. Jenna answered Hannah's question, although that is a good question. This little presentation here is just basically me winging it and trying to think of some different ways to present some different options to you all as, digital creators on campus here, and trying to provide you with just one more option of creating that type of content. You mentioned being, go ahead.
Can you show that webpage? If you go to it.wisc.edu in a tab and then type in web services. or actually, yeah, just if you were looking for this, one way you could get to it easily is going web services. But
Yes,
Matt has the link
I brought
there.
it up.
This page was a collaboration between a couple different groups within our larger um, department here at Do It in an attempt to try to make things a little bit clearer about what service should be used for what. I know that's not maybe exactly what you're looking for there, Hannah, but just mentioning it in case it is helpful for anyone who's on, like a web journey here. Um, you might be familiar with Ketter Joyner. Ketter does the artwork for the design community, has been in design community sessions before. She used to work as a developer for the WiscWeb team. All around wonderful human, was a big reason why this page became what it is today and why it's so great. So shout out to Ketter, but generally, this attempts to try to break down what you can do in different services and what you can't do so that it's very obvious. It also points you to which service to use for what. So just sharing that in case you haven't seen this before, if you have upcoming web projects that it might be useful for. But generally, I would say, Hannah, that's a great idea. I think we could probably collab with the KB team on something like that.
So Jerry, your question. I've been trying to think of how to best say this, and Andrea might be a good person to chime in here as well. But essentially, with WiscWeb, you don't have the ability to dramatically change look and feel. You have the ability to change the look and feel based on page elements that you use, different layout options, and to a certain extent, creativity. This is another session that I want to do, and Jenna's done this in the past. I mean, Jenna and I have done this both in the past, where we kind of try and show you different ways to lay out a page to make it look more engaging, to make it be more engaging. I think Jenna, one of the things that she's been working on that she might present, I think she's hoping to present, is redoing like the UW-Madison homepage, like the actual wisc.edu, using the UW theme and trying
I
to
I hesitate
replicate.
to say redoing. I don't want anyone to think I
Yeah,
am
yeah.
changing the actual. I was just trying to see like how might you adapt that kind
Yes.
of style to the standard UW theme? Because if you're not aware, the WIS.edu homepage isn't actually built in the UW theme. Um, so it's trying to show like you can make some really interesting, complex looking homepages in the UW theme if you think outside the box a little bit. So I'm actually adapting. It's another university site that I'm trying to take what they've done and then show you how you could do it in the theme. So I think we'll probably do some of those kinds of things as
Mm-hmm.
either lunch and learn little demos or full listening sessions where we'll kind of talk about um, different approaches you can take to content on your site.
So I'm grabbing E, E. All right. Well, it's not letting me just paste the URL, which way to go, Edge. Um, I guess to Jerry's question and to anybody, and I use Jenna's little test site as an example whenever I'm doing training or consultations. Jenna's done quite a bit on this to kind of highlight some of the things that can be done within the theme, some of the different options that you might want to think about if you want to do some different things. Yes, and yeah, like obviously this is a spot that Jenna has used to just kind of demo slash test slash highlight some things. So it is not meant to be a complete web page, but I do like using it a lot when I am showing people different options because the question comes up, or the I shouldn't say the question, the assumption comes quite often that the UW theme is too rigid to do things, or there's just not enough options, or it all looks the same. You know, to an extent, that is correct because it is the UW theme. It is the same brand. It is the same, for the most part, color schemes, etc. But there's a lot of different things that you can do to change up the way that you are delivering content. And I think that option exists for people to sort of think outside of the box, or something that Jenna and I always encourage people to do is if you find a website that you really like what they've done and you want to do it on yours, show it to us and let us try and tinker with finding a way to do it within the confines of the UW theme and within the confines of WiscWeb.
Yeah,
Um,
I kind of like
I like a
to
challenge.
I kind of like to jam on those. They're sort of
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. It's a we like a challenge, and we'll do that. So I guess Jerry, I don't know if that really answers your question as more of just in the broad scheme of things. There are options within your use of the website that would allow you to change the look and feel of a specific page.
Yeah, I can jump in here real quick actually.
Yeah.
So that's all great information. I was specifically thinking about the KB pages
Oh,
because
yes.
you mentioned how you can change the look and feel of the KB
Mm-hmm.
pages to be quote
Mm-hmm.
more websitey. I'm sorry, I love that word. Um,
Yeah.
so like, can you do that on specific pages? For example, I work with an SMPH. If I want to dramatically change the look and feel of something, does that affect every document I create within SMPH, or can I do specific pages?
That's a good question. So you have options to do. There are. So let me go back into the admin tool. So I'll go into the settings real quick. How the broad site changes can be done is via the layout functions, and in the layout functions you have this ability to add your own custom CSS broadly. So that would change look and feel. But you also have the ability, document by document, if you wanted to, you could generate. I'll show the additional fields down here. There is areas where you can create custom CSS or custom JavaScript for this individual document itself as well. And within the knowledge base, you do have the ability, let me cancel this update real quick, leave. You do have the ability to create templates. So if you really wanted to create a set of templates and then with each of those templates create some custom CSS, you could change up the look and the feel of an individual document versus the look of the entire space itself. So there is some ability to do that there. I guess what I would say is if you really wanted to try and tinker with that, we should talk more so that I can answer that better as to what limitations may exist there. But in the broad scheme of things, yes, you do have some options there with the knowledge base to do site-wide versus doc specific.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yep. Any other questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, critiques? Let me tell you something. We've had 2 days of snow. I'm done with snow. How do KB Docs work with external search, SEO, Google? Is there a way to adjust or limit them? Ooh, that's a good question, Paige. I'm not sure about ways to limit them other than, there's the obvious options of it would depend on who your audience is. If your audience was internal campus, you do have the ability to set a document. Let me think of a good one here. So for example, we have this document here, which is our sites hosted by WiscWeb. We have it set to be external, internal with campus login. What that means is the document is publicly visible. The title is publicly visible, but to access the content, you have to have a net ID. Essentially there, if it's something that has to have a net ID limitation to it, Google's not going to be able to crawl the content of it because obviously it can't get into it. So to that extent, you are limiting its availability. Otherwise, you can apply Google Analytics to your documents. Don't think we have any functions in KB for Search Console. You can use Tag Manager. guess I would have to, I guess I would want to know more about what you would want to do there. It works as anything else would work with external searching, SEO, and Google type stuff because it is a web-based online resource. So Google can crawl it. You could maybe use Google Search Console with a KB URL. I've never done that before, so that's an interestingly new challenge. I'm left wanting more there with my own brain because I, in the broad scheme of things, I think it works like any other website. And then the limitations come into what you would want to do internally here. However, as I'm sitting here thinking about it out loud, I'm curious as to whether or not you could implement a knowledge base domain into Google Search Console and then via Google Search Console add URLs that you would want to not show up via Google search, etc. That doesn't answer your question too much, but it just gets my mind thinking about asking that question of Wei Zhang, our developer, as to whether or not that's something that would work. I would say if you're interested, follow up with me on that. Yeah, because it's interesting. That's an interesting thought because I hadn't thought about that, but then my mind went to Google Search Console, and then I thought, maybe you could start to limit it via the options that exist within Google Search Console.
Matt, I have to hop at 1 p.m. for a meeting, but before I leave, I wanted to I wanted to just throw out to the group real quick. We have 3 minutes. We are going to be starting to focus on more listening sessions. So this was sort of a listening session that was requested, learning more about what should be in WiscWeb versus the KB. If you have other ideas, we do have a list of a couple that y'all had already submitted. But if you have ideas on things that you want to learn more about or dive deeper into, please throw them in the chat and we can try to make sure we cover them.
Yeah, and the next one that I want to do is I want to do a broad user experience, introducing concepts of user experience to you all and some strategies that you could take advantage of. And actually, I think that's one where I might reach out to Keter and maybe do a joint session with her because for those of you who haven't had the joy of getting to hang out with Keter, she's awesome, and she is an exceptional resource. So yes, I do have a hard stop at 1 because I have a meeting at 1 that I have to bounce out to as well. So I'll stop the recording now. Thank you all for attending. You guys obviously have my email address. Never, ever hesitate to reach out to me if you have questions, concerns, comments, anything of that nature, or as Jenna just said, any suggestions for future sessions that you might be interested in. Because if you're interested in it, odds are that information will be relevant to a number of people in our audience as well. So thanks a lot, everybody. And I'll stop sharing and I will stop recording. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.